This is Only the Strong Survive, a podcast powered by Kahn Media, where we dive deep into the world of business, leadership, and innovation. I'm your host, Dan Kahn, and I'm honored to have you join us today. So let's get ready to learn some survival skills together. Hey everybody, it's Dan Kahn. Before we get to this week's episode of Only the Strong Survive, we are very proud to announce that we have launched a new sister company called The Garage Agency. So the Garage Agency, that is our entire intent, is we help auto body and collision repair shops at the local and regional level fill their bays, get more customers, get more leads, and earn more business. So we're excited. We are very passionate about helping local and regional small businesses. You can learn more by going to thegarageagency.com. Thanks, and enjoy the episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Only the Strong Survive. I'm your host, Dan Kahn. And today we've got a great guest joining us, Mike Spagnola, the president and CEO of SEMA. Mike has spent decades in the automotive aftermarket, from building and running companies to now leading one of the most influential organizations in the automotive industry. Mike, my friend, it's great to have you on. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's great to be with you, Dan. Longtime friends and first time we get to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really looking forward to this. So, and we have a lot to talk about. So we can dive on in. So I think it's anybody who's ever been to SEMA or is involved in the aftermarket probably knows your name. And they probably know you just because you spent a lot of time walking the show floor and attending events, and you're one of the best networking people I've ever met. But for those who don't know your backstory, let's start at the beginning. I know you spent a big part of your career, building a company called Street Scene. Can you walk us through kind of your roots in the industry, how you got into this whole thing, and tell us about your company before?
Yeah, I guess, just like so many other car guys, I've had that passion since I think I was 5 or 6 years old. I can remember growing up, I grew up kind of during the Vietnam era, and the older kids that went away to Vietnam came back and they had a bit of money in their pockets. So that was at the time when 68 Camaros and Corvettes and, all the original muscle car era was really happening. And I would hear these cars coming in to the neighborhood and run out in the street just to watch them run down the street. And just, the smell, the sound, the fumes of all of that. Had a few dads on the street. They say it takes a village to raise a kid. I certainly was part of that. Some of the dads on the streets were into cars and boats and motorcycles, and so I got a chance to grow up around that. I had a brother-in-law who owned a sports car center in Glendale, California, so I used to go there as well, and just surrounded myself with car people, I think, since childhood, really. In high school, I took auto shop both my junior and senior year, and probably one of the most really influential times in my career. In my senior year, we had a couple of automotive guys that came to my auto shop class, and one of them was very well known. And because he had gone to my school, he offered a $200 scholarship to the top person in that automotive class. And I ended up winning that scholarship, and the guy that gave it to me was Mickey Thompson.
Wow.
And so he certainly stayed alongside of me throughout the beginning of my career. Right out of high school, I was going to college and trying to become a race car driver and SCCA stuff. And I worked at a Datsun dealership, literally sweeping floors, delivery driver, kind of worked my way up through the parts chain there. Left there and went to work for an import car parts company called Babchion for 13 years, rose to VP of sales and marketing there, and then stepped out on my own and started to work in a couple different companies, buying and selling. Over the years, bought and sold 5 companies and ran a few different companies, and ended up at SEMA on a 3-year contract. Sold my last company called Street Scene, my shares of it, and came to work to SEMA on a 3-year contract to start the SEMA garages, and working on 14 years into my 3-year contract at SEMA.
Well, I want to get into Street Scene, but I want to back up for a second because, I hear a lot of talk about like the phrase core memories. For me, one of my sort of core SEMA memories was not something I experienced, it was something you did. And I feel like, I've been involved in the industry in one way or another for like 25 years. It's hard to surprise me. And I will never forget your first banquet when you were in the top spot. I did not. I was fresh off the board, so I didn't have a lot of insight into the programming that night. I didn't know what was going to happen on stage at the banquet. And to be honest, the banquet's kind of hit or miss. I think you guys have done a really good job tightening up the program. And in this past one was really different because it was almost like a stage show. But, there was a stretch of time there where it was like 3.5 hours long and you're sitting there and you're like, oh my God, like, is this ever going to end? After a long day working, right? So it's hard to get sort of surprised. And usually there's some sort of like talent or something, comedian or whatever. You brought your shop teacher to the show. And can you tell that story really quickly? Because it was so emotional and it was so impactful. I know you've continued to do that since, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, there was actually, again, it's those people that are influential in your life. And I actually got to bring my shop. I had 2 shop teachers. Actually, I had 3 shop teachers. My 2 of them have passed on, but the wife of one of the shop teachers, Mrs. Lee, who was my first year of auto shop. Mr. Lee was my shop teacher, and again was one of those guys that was just really cool. I mean, we'd stay after class and work on his Porsche, and he would let us just tear this thing down, this 911, which, at 16 years old to get to do that.
That's a relatively modern sports car. You're like a bunch of high school kids work on it.
And so I wanted to thank his wife anyway and their family, Mrs. Lee. And then Richard Nicholson, who is still alive today. Richard is actually the nephew of Dino Don Nicholson. And he was my other shop teacher. And I just wanted to publicly, he didn't know it. Of course, neither one of the teachers knew it, but I just wanted to publicly thank them. And it's really about, as you grow older, you really do start to understand how influential people are in your life. Yeah. And I hope we, Dan, you and I and others continue to pass that torch on and bring up that next generation and take time to talk to them. And I think that's really critical, especially in our industry, is to be able to mentor to that next group. And you just don't know what that influence looks like until later in life. But that definitely happens. And it's happened, I don't know where I'd be today if I didn't have those sort of people that really took the time and care and energy to talk to me and to fuel that passion and to be part of something that turned out to be much bigger than I ever expected to be.
I think that might be why I thought I was so kind of blown away by that moment when you did that at the show, because mine was Barry Lampke, who was the shop teacher at El Camino High School. And same deal. He took interest in a small group of us that were kind of idiot car guys that weren't doing all that well in school, but were mechanical. And he took an interest in us and let us kind of do our thing and kind of gave us a place to hang out. And so, I thought that, because I think most car guys probably have that person, whether it's a shop teacher or an uncle or a neighbor or a dad or whatever. So that's pretty neat that you did that. So thank you for doing that. It set a great precedent.
Yeah. I had great parents. My mom, very diverse. My mom was an opera singer and my dad was a bartender. And so, cars were meant to take you from point A to point B, but boy, to me, it was just much more than that. I'm a firm believer that we all have these God-given talents, and mine was cars and the passion of cars, and like so many others. And you can choose to do what you want with that, but for me, it gave me a great career, and I'm very thankful for that.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons to speak as sort of a voice of the membership of SEMA for a minute, and that's pretty, I guess, arrogant of me to do that, but I'll do it anyway. I think that was one of the reasons a lot of people, at least in my circles, were really relieved when you came into leadership at SEMA, because you are an enthusiast. You're an actual car person, and you come from the industry, and you know both the good and the challenge of operating a business in our industry. And I like to say all the time that what we sell is we sell wants, not needs.
Right.
And that's fun. It's fun to sell car guys things they get to play with and they get excited, and there's nobody more passionate than someone who's talking to you about a new thing they get to buy and they're excited about it. But we're also we're going to be susceptible to economic changes and things like that a little more so than a company that maybe sells brake pads or something like that. So I guess on that note, let's talk about street scene for a minute, because you ran a business that It's funny now that, like, especially I think as we're recording this, Fast and Furious is getting ready to release their final movie, and there's a roller coaster opening, and there's all this stuff going on. But I mean, there was a moment there where both sport trucks, tuner culture, import culture, that was all pretty fringe and kind of, I mean, at one point it got huge, but before it got huge, it was kind of limited to SoCal, and it was kind of weird compared to the traditional muscle car scene. And you were a big part of making that thing mainstream. How did that all come about?
Yeah, it was, I sold kind of going back, I sold one of the companies I was working with in 97. And I had a chance to join an investment group, which was an experience, I'll say. But we bought up a bunch of companies. We bought up Street Scene, which was just a little $60,000 a month company at the time. We bought Traders Truck Accessories. We bought Wolf Automotive, which was a company I ran earlier. We bought a group called Performance Marketing, along with other ancillary things. I mean, we bought Bunny Love Carrot Company, and we bought a pasta company. We bought a aerospace company. But it was one of these investment groups, and I came in to kind of run the automotive arm, but I had a chance to do a few other things. Well, I wasn't really happy there, to be honest, in being part of an investment group, and I kind of thought it took the soul out of the business. But kind of long story short, had a chance after about 20 months to buy Street Scene out, and with a couple partners, and went ahead and did that. And it was a big risk for me because I'd gone from running a very large, successful company to going to this investment group. It looked like a lot of fun in the beginning. Wells Fargo building, 33rd floor, a bunch of very professional guys from the banking industry. But I spent my whole time with bankers and attorneys and really got away from the soul of the business. And so it wasn't for me. So took over Street Scene, but I went from that kind of 33rd floor, Wells Fargo, suits and ties, high-end, big dollar guys, to taking this little $60,000 company and with 4 other people and trying to build this thing back up. So that was it was a fun time. It was a scary time. It was probably one of the biggest risks I ever took, but it was fun. There were some lean months there, but built it back up and really got into that lower truck kind of side of the business. At the time was really big. Sport truck was growing anyway. Built some pretty good products, and I really took I've always had this kind of core idea that the way you grow business is more things to sell, more people to sell them to. I mean, that's really basics of the business, right? And tried to develop some really good looking products and really take that industry by storm, and then just watch it explode. And even through the SEMA show, I was able to get those more people to sell to, and then took that whole business, expanded into the tuner market and some of that Fast and Furious stuff, and then even into muscle cars from there. And it just shows you not to pigeonhole yourself. So, even though we were known as a sport truck company and kind of maybe even a tuner car company, I did have questions as whether or not the muscle car industry would embrace us, and they did well. When the new 1995 Mustang came out, we were on the leading edge of that. We had a chance to work with Ford Motor Company. I actually had a body in white, which was, just a core body in a couple years before that I was able to work with Ford on and do some developed products with them. And so lots of experience there and lots of opportunity to just grow that business. We were lucky to have the covers of many, many magazines, both in the truck world and in the muscle car world and in the tuner car world. And that really expanded our business and allowed us to grow. It was, for me, I enjoy those markets. So I think that helped. I think in any market that you're in, you better study it, you better know it, you better be part of it, you better live it. And I had the opportunity to do that. So it was a great experience in life for sure.
That's really cool. What is it like now? I'm just kind of curious on a side note. It's interesting. I not only has like the OBS truck thing come back in a huge way, but I'm even seeing like people are dragging out these project trucks from back then that still have the teal paint and the splatter paint and 15-inch billet wheels and roll pans and cowl hoods and year old mirrors. And it's interesting because it's almost like a barn find thing that's happening where those cars are selling for, those trucks are selling for big money if they're like preserved from that era. Is that nostalgic for you? Is it weird? Like, what's that like seeing that stuff is now old enough that it's become cool again?
Well, first off, it ages you, but it,
me too.
yeah, but it is really cool. It's fun to see that, of course, C10s have just gotten to a point now where, they're almost out of reach and very expensive to restore. And, you're seeing them at Barrett Jackson for $200,000 and $300,000, which is just crazy. Right. So I think CKs is next in sort of that OBS sort of look. It's exciting to see. It's exciting to find them. I've recently bought and sold a few of those. I actually have a set of 15-inch Boyd wheels that I'm preserving for my next build. And I'm going to kind of maybe jump back into that. It is a little hard to find some of the parts. Some of the old street scene parts are gone, and I think that tooling's gone. But somebody will revive it for sure. And I think that's the next big wave. I mean, I think you can still buy those trucks for $5,000 or $6,000, but not for long.
Not for long. Yeah, they're going up fast.
Excuse me.
That's cool. As we move on to SEMA, I do want to kind of wrap up sort of your backstory a little bit. You've seen the industry from the ground level. You've obviously worked in M&A. You've run SEMA member companies. Now, obviously, you run the organization and the show. How different is your perspective now as the CEO of SEMA compared to when you were in the trenches running the business?
So I think I think there's a lot of similarities, to be honest. While we are a trade organization, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to apply those same principles. I think you still, let's face it, the SEMA show is a business, and it's got to be run like a business. And, a lot of those sort of things you have to be able to do. We're doing a lot of investment in that area and just new software and systems and with our sales team and just really approaching some of these areas as a business while not forgetting that we're also a membership-based business, but also protecting the industry. So, I look at it as while membership is really important to us, and that is the core of our business, is the people that are really connected to us. We're protecting the industry and we're growing the industry. So, if you look at even like our government relations team, while we're membership based, they're there to protect the entire industry. And that's, you start to look at things at a much broader and more serious note, that if we don't do a lot of work to protect the industry, there's no business for any of us. We're $53 billion a year in sales and $337 billion of economic impact. So you start to understand the size and the seriousness and the opportunities there. Things like our SEMA Garage and our SEMA Data, those are there to really grow and protect the industry and really to help the industry grow. And so, again, while we're this trade organization, you got to look at everything from a business view without forgetting your membership and forgetting that what you have to pour back into the industry.
That makes a lot of sense. And you touched on a couple of things there that I think maybe people who are deep into SEMA leadership or volunteerism, or even just, I would venture a guess that some members utilize more services than others, but there's a few things that are kind of happening in the background that are sort of always on that people probably don't necessarily realize or appreciate. Can you let's start with the DC operation, because it seems like just in the last few years has been transformed. Can you kind of explain what that is and what's going on over there?
Yeah, Karen Bailey has just been a great asset to us in just growing that piece of the business. And we've literally tripled that budget here in the last couple of years, really since you were on the board. We've poured a lot more into it because of the fact that it really is. I mean, we have to stand up for our rights to continue to be able to modify, continue to be able to do off-roading, continue to be able to have racetracks available, all those sorts of things. In the off-road community alone, they say no trails, no sales, right? And it's more than just protecting those trails. It's really that lifestyle. So doing things like making sure that through our newest acquisition, Orba, making sure that we protect the off-road industry and we protect the ability for people to just get out in the open And that lifestyle of everything off-road, from overlanding to off-roading to dirt bikes and side-by-sides, and that side of the business is obviously huge, but we have to protect that. And then you think about things like racetracks. Again, if we don't have racetracks, we don't have performance, we don't have sales. And so protecting the fact that we should to support a lot of these racetracks. And I'll just give you one idea. We've got legislation pending in several states now that say if the racetrack was there first, and typically these racetracks are out, in the countryside, or out at least, far from a lot of housing. But as time goes on, housing creeps into the racetrack areas, and then all of a sudden it's a noise issue where the local neighborhoods are trying to shut down the racetracks because of noise. So we've got legislation saying that if those racetracks were first there before anything else, and then people want to build developments around them, they can't just come back and say, well, hey, it's a noise problem. They got to know that going in. And so we're protecting racetracks in those areas. And all sorts of other legislation, whether it's in making sure we can continue to modify vehicles, being able to protect them through emissions compliance, making sure that our legislature and all those authorities know about our industry and protect that industry. And, just even our economic impact report shows these politicians how big of an industry we are. And when they make rule changes, it affects us. And being present and being heard and being seen is really, really critical to make sure that we can continue to protect and grow the industry.
It's interesting. You've got a rally coming up pretty soon, about time, right after this episode drops, right? The DC rally. Can you explain what that is? And I will say up front, I think I've attended almost every one in the last 10 or 15 years, and they're really a good program. Yeah,
and thank you for being part of that, because it's really critical that these legislators hear our voice. So we ascend on Capitol Hill. We're actually going to be doing one in California, and then our big one will be in Washington, D.C., and we'll have several talking points again this year. And we literally just go door to door talking to legislators, senators, and Congress people about what our needs are and what our wants are. And we'll do it even by state. So we'll have, you've always been part of our California contingency, and we'll go to see California legislators and talk to them about bills that we have, talk to them about our needs, talk to them about protecting our industry, talking to them about the size of our industry. And we'll do that state by state. And it's really fun. It's challenging. To be honest, I used to get a little bit intimidated, because you get a chance to talk to some of these senators and Congress people that you see on TV, and they're pretty powerful and important. But over time, you realize they're just people, right? And they're just like you and I. And they're sometimes they see things our way, sometimes they don't. But it's just having conversation and making sure that they understand who we are, what our needs are. Again, protecting that industry, growing that industry, the economic impact of things when they're making decisions, and letting them know who the people are in their districts and how they can help those people. I mean, they are there to serve the people, and just making that very clear to them. It's been fun. I've actually developed a lot of friends because of that, people that you would know in the industry or know on legislators. And so you have to go in from a power, from a strength aspect. You have to go in from a confidence standpoint, and just talk to them. And you'll find typically that they'll listen. You'll find typically that they understand. And it's important, again, that they understand what our needs are.
Well, I would say, I'll throw a shameless plug in here. If you're listening to this and you are a member of SEMA or you're involved in the aftermarket, I would definitely look hard at the SEMA DC rally as something to attend. And first of all, like Mike is saying, Karen, who runs the DC office, and her team are fabulous. They do a really good job. Just in general, like and I mean, as a professional communicator, what they do for PR is different than what we do. We're fortunate that we get to work with Karen and some members of her team, and alongside RJ and Eric and the SEMA PR team. And the way they handle strategic comms is like House of Cards, the old Netflix show. It's very different than what we do, and it's impressive. I mean, these are skilled people who are used to sort of trying to kind of sway the opinion not of the public, but of these lawmakers. And that is a weird ecosystem that they have to operate in. It's not something I'm used to.
It is.
It's very like relationship based, but also sort of transactional. And like, I'm going to help you with this thing, and then one day you can help me with this other thing. And it feels good knowing there's a team of people there kind of looking out for us out there.
Now they do a great job, and we've strengthened that team. We've hired the best we can find, and they're very good at it. And we're going to continue to press on in those areas as even, things change and people come into office and leave office, but it's important that we continue that beat through the years. And we've had some great successes. I mean, if you even look at the EV mandates that were facing us a few years ago, we're not against EVs. We think EVs are part of the future. We just didn't think they were the only answer. And we thought that people should be able to continue to innovate and to look at different ways. And depending on what your needs are, you should be able to buy that vehicle for your needs. If you need a diesel truck to haul your trailer, you should be able to buy a diesel truck. If you need an EV for running around town or whatever your needs are, you should be able to do that. Or a nice vehicle. Or I still think hydrogen's got some play in the future.
Let the free market decide. I mean, what we're living through, we're recording this in the middle of April, and gas prices at the pump right now are pretty crazy, and diesel's even crazier. So, I think all of a sudden, we're pitching a PR thing right now for a Bring a Trailer that, if you want a really nice EV, you can get a Lucid Air or a Rivian half off right now if you get one used. And I'll be honest, I've never been an EV guy, but about now I'm like, I wouldn't mind dailying something like that, or a Tesla Plaid would be a pretty nice daily driver right about now, and they're pretty fast. So,
sure. Well, even think about, America was built on innovation, and so who knows what's still out there? I mean, there's a lot of work being done in synthetic fuels and different technologies, and even in the ICE engines, they're becoming more and more efficient. And some of the work you're seeing in even Formula One, some of that advanced stuff in fuels and energy, and that's all the future for us. And we should continue, and we must continue to innovate and look for ways to. We're all for clean air. We're all for the environment. You should just be able to pick what you want to drive and find that balanced effort. So, we've been pretty vocal about that.
Yeah, I guess to kind of wrap up the DC thing, I will also say to those considering going to the DC rally, one of the things I like about it, you just mentioned it is even if you don't care about politics at all, it's a great networking opportunity because you're going to be in a room with mostly CEOs and owners. So if you want to be in a room with a bunch of business owners and CEOs, and it's a pretty high sort of density of decision makers in a relatively small room. So you can do some really good networking at that event. But I had a personal experience a few years ago when the RPM Act was still a thing that at the time, my member of Congress, I won't name her, but you can look her up. She's still the member of Congress for most of Ventura County. She's very left-leaning. She's very green. The year prior, I tried to pitch her and totally got nowhere because I was talking about racetracks. And I finally realized she doesn't care about that. And I worked with the SEMA team, and they said, look, you're not... I don't think they phrased it this way, but I think the intent was that's not the way you're going to get her to our side. And so the second year I went in and pitched her. Basically, I just talked about hey, do you know there's a circle track in your district? And do you know how many people get employed by all the businesses within about a 10-mile perimeter of that track? And talked about ARP fasteners and talked about all these different companies that were based, Maxwell Industries, who we know, those guys have set a bunch of land speed records, and, Borla Exhaust, and just kind of went down the laundry list of the 3,000 or 4,000 jobs that were created by these companies that are all supplying people who in part go to that racetrack. And she actually changed her mind and supported it. So if I can get her, and she's the ultimate Prius driver, to support us, it's doable. So I do think, things are so polarized right now. Everyone kind of thinks oh, you're either in this camp or the other camp. You're either my friend or my mortal enemy. And it's no, I think you're right, Mike, that comment you made earlier. I think these are just people, and they want to get reelected, right? And they want to make sure there's jobs and a good economy. And in some cases, maybe you can make a difference. So don't give up, No,
for sure. We work obviously with both sides of the aisle, sometimes three sides of the aisle. And, It's you find a lot of car people, you find a lot of passionate people. They really do want to help you in business. Most of them. You find a way to balance between environmental concerns and business concerns and all those sorts of things. It works. It really does work. I think I might have gotten a D in civics in high school and never expected to be in the position I'm in. And I don't know if my civics teacher is still alive, but I wish they were and could see what we're doing today. But it's really fun, and it's something. Again, at first I think I was intimidated, but I now actually enjoy it. And you're right, the DC rally is just one area where we get a lot of business people together, and we just go knock on doors. And the team does a great job setting up a lot of meetings, and it's really a great experience. I mean, you can't not have fun just walking the halls of Congress and walking through the Senate and walking through these floors and
it's cool
seeing the plaques of major names in their offices, and you really get a chance to see how the government works. And you do get this sense of patriotism for sure. You just can't help but, no matter what your politics are, as you walk by the White House or you see the Capitol building or you see the various monuments, you can't help but feel pretty proud to be in America.
Yeah, there was one year, I think Melanie White and I and a couple of other people got passes to go to the floor of the Senate while they were voting on a bill.
I remember that.
And it was weird. I think you might have been with us. Weren't you in that?
Yeah, I think I was.
It was such a weird, I didn't know. Like you, I mean, I was in a civics class, but I probably didn't pay close enough attention. And I got there and it was just such an unusual experience because it looks very different than on C-SPAN, I guess, is you get there and it's just like people are coming and going and there's like lights and there's all these like staffers you really can't see on camera. They're kind of like sitting on the floor and they're like doing all the paperwork. And that is the other thing about DC that shocked me is that whole town is run by like 25-year-olds.
It is, yeah.
It's really interesting. You see the famous people, but they're not the ones. I mean, the sausage is made by an army of basically like college grads that sort of come in there and
they do. And they advise their leaders as to what they see and get the facts together. So and no matter what you hear on the news and all those sorts of things, these two sides still do work together. They do find common areas of ground that they can work together on. And, you hear about the most explosive stuff, but there's a lot of work that does go on, and there is good things happening in a lot of areas. And the other thing you have to realize is when you go in, we'll go in with a group of people to see, you name the legislator, and we're talking about things we want, and the next group coming in could be talking to them about exactly the opposite. So you have to be able to make your case, and they listen to a lot of different people on a lot of subjects every day. So you have to be poignant. You have to be really on point with what you need and what you want, and get your talking points right. But again, the DC team helps you through that, and it's just fun. And it's again, it can be intimidating at first, but over time you learn that you can get through these things, and it really does make a difference. That's the biggest thing. I think people think, well, like anything else, my vote doesn't count, my going doesn't count, any of those sort of things. It does count, because if you're not there making noise, someone else will make noise against you.
That's right. Well, on that note, SEMA was involved years ago now, and I think there was another little dust up more recently that SEMA helped with. Saving one of my favorite events that's also a great client, which is King of the Hammers. And I'm not sure necessarily everybody out there in the listening world knows that Hammers was almost killed off because of a turtle or a tortoise. Yeah. Like a tortoise, I guess, where they, it's right next to like an artillery range for the military, and they figured out, it is in California, that's a thing, that there was some sort of endangered desert tortoise, and they were going to try and stop the BLM from letting KOH happen on that land. And it got pretty close, and SEMA jumped in to help. And there was kind of a couple different advocacy groups, I think, including Orba, I believe, that got involved. And they got that kind of situation turned around and saved, right?
Yeah, again, it's, what people have to understand is there's got to be areas for recreation. And if you close those areas off, people are still going to find illegal ways to do that. So let's figure out where there's some great trails, there's some great areas to do off-roading, there's some great areas to get out and enjoy your hobby, your sport, your lifestyle. Let's do it in a safe and protected manner in a specific area, but allow people to do those sorts of things. I mean, again, if you just look at the economic impact of King of the Hammers, and it's huge now. I mean, what are the stats? It's, I think, over 100,000 people come to that event every year.
Over 100,000 people. San Bernardino did an economic impact study, and the numbers were massive. When you start looking at between motos and hammers and hotel rooms and support and all the restaurants and even Ontario Airport and the Airport Authority, I mean, it's the fingers for that thing go out, 30, 40 miles in terms of the impact it has.
Yeah. And we're paying, if through the purchase of Orb and some other things we're doing, we're really paying attention to the whole off-road community now. I mean, that's, if you look at where the skating to where the puck's going, as we often say, the off-road community and the tuner industry are two really burgeoning, growing areas for us. And the ability to pour some water on that and watch it grow and help it along the way and protecting those off-road communities. And again, no trails, no sales. And so, but even more than that, it's the people, it's the lifestyle. It is all of that goes on, and we want to make sure that they're protected. We want to see that grow. We're going to be doing a lot of work even this year at the SEMA show, and we're doing a full kind of area in power sports and starting to really grow that West Hall to truck, off-road truck, side-by-sides, dirt bikes, street bikes, overland, really starting to see what we can do to grow that piece of the business. And so we've hired a power sports guy, and we're talking to kind of the street motorcycle guys as well as the power sports guys, and really watching that side of the business grow. I think one of the indicators we saw last year was when Toyota released that side-by-side in their booth at the SEMA show on the first day, that Scion side-by-side, it had 1 billion impressions in 24 hours. Toyota let us know that they've never released any vehicle anywhere in the world that's had 1 billion impressions in 24 hours. And so you as a marketing guy would understand that better than I do, but it just shows you the demand for that market. It shows you the power of SEMA and the SEMA show. It shows you how live and well the whole off-road community is. Personally, I enjoy it. My kids enjoy it. We're doing a bit of racing off-road now ourselves. And it's just a cool community and a lot of fun and really a great growing area.
I agree. And I think, I want to talk about your family in a minute, because I think that's a cool part of the story. But, the power sports thing at the SEMA show, I think, is a real opportunity. And, we were talking about hammers, and I mean, it was only 6-7 years ago that wasn't really a thing. That's, it's sort of the penultimate off-road race. It was 4,400 rigs with, hand-built motors and, tube frame chassis. And these are all, unobtainium. There's a handful of people that could afford to run a race team like that with that kind of equipment. And then all of a sudden, here come the side-by-sides. And in some of those classes and in some of those races, you had pretty accessible hardware. Yeah. And they're winning, and they're even beating some of the dedicated tube frame stuff, which is wild. So I think that was such a turning point. But I mean, we've got a Polaris here. And what really opened my eyes for me was that it's really the side-by-side and power sports thing. And I guess I shouldn't have been this shocked, because I grew up on like ATCs out at Pismo and Glamis with my family.
Sure.
Which I would never put my kids on an ATC. All those three-wheelers are super sketchy, but
especially the three-wheel ones, right?
Yeah, the three-wheel ones. The quads are fine, but the three-wheel ones, I know so many people broke collarbones on those. But
me too.
But we have a side-by-side, and it's a gateway drug. Yeah. My kids love it, and they have such a ball. And it's something that they understand it. They know the basics of how to check the oil, and they know how to check tire pressure, and it's, I think, less intimidating than other forms of motorsports or automotive. So, and they still feel like it's kind of fun, and with supervision, they can go out and have a good time. And
well, it's accessible, right? I mean,
it's accessible.
You can buy a used one for $15,000, and you can buy a brand new one for $50,000. And the way that those vehicles have just the technology that's come through now. I mean, you can pull one off the trailer and go run the Baja 500, pretty much. They've just gotten better and better. And then if you look at even on the full size truck market, of course you got your Raptor R now, and you've got Chevy's got a truck, and Toyota's coming out with one that, that's going to be in that same class and market, and Dodge. So, the OEs are paying attention to this whole off-road market as well. And I mean, did you ever think you'd see, an $80, $90, $100,000 truck, to go off-roading?
No, no. I mean, you look at either a TRX or a Raptor R, and I'm like, 20 years ago, the concept of a truck with long travel, aftermarket, race spec suspension and 600 horsepower would have been insane. I mean, that's like not. And so you're absolutely right. And so how was that a sticky conversation internally at SEMA when you guys said, "Hey, we want to bring power sports under the tent"? Was everyone happy? Was that like, were there the old guard people that were like, "Why are we doing this?" How did that go?
I think, I think it made sense to everybody in the side-by-side area, right? So you've got those sort of UTVs where you take Icon Shocks or any other brand that's a SEMA member that are making shocks for, a Ford F-150, but they're also making them for side-by-side. So that was a really easy progression, exhaust, suspension, all those sort of things, pretty easy. And it's actually a little hard to distinguish because some of those guys have got the same products in their booth for truck and for UTVs. So just, again, growing that made a little sense. Where it got a little more, okay, how do we do this, is in the dirt bike, street bike area, and just making sure that we understand that. But it's a lifestyle. If you just look at the entire, I like to call it more lifestyle. If we took that West Hall where the truck section's always been, and just said, okay, let's look at on-road trucks, off-road trucks, side-by-sides, dirt bikes, street bikes, even mountain bikes, electric mountain bikes, and overland area, and that whole get out in the countryside lifestyle. That's a big part of who we are and what we are. We just have never really identified it that way and looked to grow it. But I think it's got tremendous opportunities. And again, even the street bike, and we've had several of those manufacturers come to us and say, even going back to government affairs for a minute, they're not well represented, and how can you help us? And as we look at, we keep talking about off-road, but as we look at protecting those trails, or even King of the Hammers, any of that, it's not just trucks, it's not just side-by-sides, it's dirt bikes, it's all those things. Mm-hmm. And people bring their motorhomes and camping and all that. So we're just kind of expanding our tent to say, let's make sure all those people feel warm and welcome and part of the lifestyle. And to be honest, if you even look at all the manufacturers and all the people that come to see those buyers, a lot of those people already have a dirt bike or a side-by-side or go off-roading. So there's a natural customer base. Let's just say you're Polaris or Can-Am or any of those sort of companies. You've already got a built-in community of enthusiasts and people that are buying your products. And so it makes a lot of sense for those people to be there and to be represented at our show.
I totally understand how the off-road and truck community is going to, I think they'll embrace this. I'm curious, have you gotten feedback yet? And you and I have mutual friends in people like Terry Cargis, who runs Moto America. And, the two-wheel thing, we've had motorcycle and power sports clients for 20 years, since day one. They are just a different crowd. I think consumers think these companies are huge, but even in the OEMs, the BMW with Motorrad and Honda, the power sports divisions are not huge, and they're not part of the car company. They're typically run as sort of a separate division with different staffing, and they're all kind of pretty small comparatively, and they run pretty lean, and it's a totally different ecosystem. How have they been receptive? Are they excited? Is it, because it seems like that the two-wheel side of things tends to be a little change resistant sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. We think we can help it. We, we're looking at doing outside ride and drives. We're looking at all sorts of different areas and ability to grow that. They certainly need representation, and they certainly could use something like the SEMA show where, again, you get 160,000 people that come, and let alone the consumer play of all of that. So,
and billions of eyeballs.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. The ability for, as you know, we've got 3,000 different media people that come to the show, and the social media that goes on, and even the people that are buyers and sellers that are in that social media side and all of that. So I don't think they can get that anywhere else. I'd be lying to you if I didn't think it was going to be a crawl, walk, run situation. But I think there's some great opportunity. And again, even if you look at our outside displays where there are consumers that show up every single day, as you know, and the ability for those people to see eyeballs and see those sorts of vehicles, whether it's Harley Davidson or whether it's Triumph motorcycles or, whatever, Indian motorcycles, any of those sorts of things, it's still, give me another show that can give them that sort of opportunity and the eyeballs and the social media and the ability to even maybe ride and drive or see those displays. I think it's a great opportunity for growth, and I don't think anyone else can do it like we can.
No, and I agree, and I think you and the team have done. When I was on the board, which at this point was a while ago now, it's like 4 years ago, I think I got off. The whole time I was on, there was this constant push and pull, and COVID actually made it more challenging, I think, where you had one group that was like, we are a trade show. Stop trying to be anything other than a trade show. And then you had this other group, and I was told by people like Scooter that this wasn't a new conversation. This is a conversation that went back to like the 80s, right? And then you had this other group that's like, we're in the selling parts to people business. Why would we sort of keep out the consumer that wants to buy stuff and tell their friends? And it's back and forth and back and forth. And I think you guys have done a really good job trying to figure out how to, and this is Hatfields and McCoys. How do you make both parties happy? It's pretty hard. And I think you guys have done a really good job of it, and with the programming in the parking lot and, working with, Hoonigan and Optima, and you've got all these different kind of groups involved with, kind of entertainment type programming that also ties into the subject matter. And, but I do wonder, and now you've got the West Hall on board, and you've got sort of so you have physical space is also changing in real time. And in the midst of all this, you join, first you were, I think, running the garage and sort of OE relations. And then you transition into this, CEO role at a time of unbelievable change. I mean, you've got your trade show is changing, your association is changing, staff is changing, the facility where you hold the trade show is changing, the economy is. What was that like? I mean, was that like one of those things where it's be careful what you wish for, or was it a great opportunity? What was that? Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, to be honest, my wife asked me years ago, would I ever want to run SEMA? And I said, not on your life. But I enjoy the challenge. I really do. And I think I can make a difference. Definitely, we're having to go through a lot of change. We're doing a lot of investment. We're spending a lot of money now on software and systems and AI and all of that. Just as trying to stay on top of the markets, and really, I'm a big believer in relationship and people, and so we put a customer care team in now that is calling out to our customers and making sure that one-on-one connection sticks. But all of that change is exciting for me, and it is going back to the show. I was on that conversation. I was on the board in 2006 when that conversation was going on. And at that time, it was about 80% of the manufacturers wanted to keep it B2B, and 20% wanted to go more consumer. And now it's more like 50-50. But if you look at just the bell curve of any business, this is how I look at it. When I was with Street Scene and getting Street Scene started and going to the SEMA show, I needed distribution. So having that B2B connection, having that ability to see my customers and to show new products and to find new customers was really critical. So that's, as I developed more products, I needed more people to sell to. And that's how I grew my business. As these businesses, and there's still lots of mom and pop guys that come to the SEMA show every year. So we need that business to business connection. as your company matures, you're really not looking for a lot more distribution. You're looking to connect with your customers that you already have and show them your new products. And so again, the SEMA show helps you with that, because it's impossible for you to fly across the United States every year and see all those customers. And so even from an economic standpoint, it's cheaper to come to the SEMA show and see those customers and connect with them face to face, one-on-one, show them your new products. But a lot of people now are just looking for eyeballs and branding. They just want to make sure that the consumer sees them and knows them. So, if you take a Meguiar's, or you take even a Ford Motor Company, or any of those sort of guys, they need that consumer play. I mean, they want to see consumers. They want to show their products to consumers. And so you do need a bit of the consumer side of that thing, which is what we do now on Fridays, and we do with the outdoor activities. So it's really just trying to make sure that we satisfy our customers, our membership, and that we look at all aspects of the business. And we are diverse. I mean, if you think about even vehicles, you've got lowriders there, and you've got lifted trucks, and you've got muscle cars, and you've got restoration products, and now side by sides, and if you just think about the total kind of structure of the automotive industry, there's so much there, and we want to make sure that that's well fed.
If you were talking to somebody who maybe hasn't been to the show in the last 4 or 5 years, and they were sort of on the fence about, do I come, do I not come? What would you tell them about what SEMA has turned into today and why they should attend?
Yeah, well, first off, bring your walking shoes, because I think we're true. 32 miles of highways.
This West Hall thing is killing me. I mean, I'm glad that it's there, but if you do that walk a couple times in one day, that's a lot of steps.
It's exciting, and now the remodel is done. The place is just gorgeous. So even if you haven't been for a couple of years, you have to come just to see how beautiful it is now, and the opportunities both inside and outside. But it's the largest gathering of automotive people in the U.S. If you look at it, from that angle, we're the largest. We've been voted the #1 trade show in America in the automotive side. So, and that's why the OEs are back, and we're going to have several OEs again this year. You're going to see new products out of them. You're going to see some EV manufacturers there this year, so the opportunity to see all the new products and to see what's going on. If you're any sort of student in the industry, which hopefully we all are, you have to be there to see what's going on and to see, all those new products. I walk that show every year when I can, and I still look at stuff and say, gosh, I wish I'd thought of that. I mean, the entrepreneurs that are there, and the ability just to connect with that industry and to be part of it, and to be just that one thread of such a big fabric of the industry is just amazing. And if you look at all the halls now, and upper and lower, and what we've done with the outside, and Tom Gattuso and the team just continue to innovate and make that different. We do a concert now on Friday night, and because that's changing as well. If you look at guys my age, we're starting to age out. And when I first came to the SEMA show, we were in suits and ties, right? And so if you just look at it from that end, but where it was strictly business, and you wrote orders, and you bought specials, and you did those sorts of things, it's changing. And the next generation, we do a lot of study work on what trade shows are and where they're going. And the next generation wants to be entertained while they do work. And so just the way that you entertain, whether that's through the concert that we do on Friday night, or whether that's those outside displays, or drifting, or all those sorts of things that go on outside, that's what the next generation of buyers and sellers want to be and want to see. And so we're trying to keep up on that as well, and trying to make sure that people enjoy the time that's there. It's an experience. It is definitely an experience to be at the SEMA show, and it's one of those tickets you got to do.
Well, I think you're right. And for me, one of my, highlights of the last couple of years is seeing how some of the brands have really embraced the challenge of what you just described. Like, how can you show up with a 10 by 20, have a bunch of products sitting on, shelves in a display unit, and have a stack of catalogs, and you just sit in your director's chair and kind of cross your arms? Sure. You can do that, and you'll sell some stuff, and that's fine. But the ones that have really leaned into what you just described, how do you create something that's immersive? And that doesn't mean you have to be Optima that's got this whole parking lot with, 50 autocross cars and a drift demonstration. I mean, that's awesome, and I like checking it out. But not everyone has that budget or those resources, right? But I mean, I've even seen just examples of companies that have sort of embraced, like Roadster Shop does a really great job, and not a client or anything. I like those guys. Every year they've got some new trick up their sleeve where they've got something, like they did a simultaneous unveil last SEMA of, I think, it was 5 or 6 different vehicles. They were all on Roadster Shop chassis. They pulled the covers off all at the same time, and it was cool. It was sort of a spectacle. I thought that was great. And another example for me, at least, would be like, MagnaFlow has done this really interesting job where they have this sort of gated area you're not allowed into unless you're in like the cool guy club to go in there for a meeting. And on the outside, they've got, celebrities doing signings in their podcast studio. I think Norris of Blueprint did a great job this past year with Chip Foose and that Lincoln. To me, that's the part that makes it. I mean, I do a lot of trade shows, and nothing is like the SEMA show. Everything else is kind of boring, and you go, and it's fine, and then you leave. But if you're a car guy, it's not just the concert that's entertaining; it's everything.
It is, and you're right. The creativity of all those sort of guys is just amazing. And then you look at these builds. I mean, I like to tinker on cars still, but every year you look at some of these builds, and you're like there's nothing left to do. That how could you do anything different than it's already being done?
How do you level up?
And then you see these builds, and you're like, oh my God! I mean, the welds and the frames and the work that's being done now, and the creativity and they're even bringing Formula One technology into some of this stuff, and you just don't think. And then you look at Battle of the Builders. You look at Young Guns. Some of these kids, 29 and under, that are building these vehicles, and it's like. You see this 22-year-old kid that's got more talent in his little finger than I have in my whole body. And some part of me is jealous, but part of me is just like, that is so cool and so neat to see. And engine swaps and all those sorts of things that are going on, and colors and styles and what trends are coming in and what colors are coming in, and the muted colors now, and all those sort of things that happen and happened at the SEMA show. Are all part of it. And then the people that show up, as Mohammed bin Salim, who's the head of the FIA.
I was about to bring him up. Yeah, you read my mind.
He shows
head of the F1.
Yeah, head of F1. He shows up. The heads of Ford and GM and so many people.
I've seen Farley walking the show.
You'll see Farley, and you'll see rock stars and music stars and all those sort of people that just come to the show, and sometimes they try to stay low key. Leno shows up, of course, every year, and has just been a great advocate for SEMA. And so, Craig Jackson, all of those people that it is the gathering of the who's who in the automotive aftermarket for sure.
I have a great Mohammed story. So for the people listening who don't know who we're talking about, he's the head of F1, a pretty powerful guy. Yeah. Also got a crazy car collection.
He does.
And 2 years ago at SEMA, the Ring brothers were debuting Invader, that $1 million Grand National GNX that they built. And the backstory in that build, really quickly, that's really cool, is it's a relatively young guy that owns the car. He's in his 40s. And his daughter's 10 or 11. She's not, maybe 12. But she's really into it. And she was the one who pushed him to build this car. And she was there for updates on the car. And she knows everything about Grand Nationals and T-Types and GNXs. It's really cool. And at the unveil, I have a photo in my camera roll on my phone where they're pulling the cover off. And Muhammad is there for the unveil. And the daughter's there. And the dad is there who owns the car. And all of a sudden, Muhammad and this girl have this conversation. And for 10 minutes, they're talking about GMG bodies. And they're engrossed in conversation. And I'm like, this is crazy that the head of F1 is talking to an 11-year-old. And they're having a car guy conversation. It was very cool. I'm like, this could not happen anywhere else. This is... Yeah. And super obscure, not like they're talking about Ferraris or something. Right. They're talking about GMG bodies. So it was neat. And I think that was a very uniquely SEMA show moment.
Yeah, that is just part of this whole automotive car culture, isn't it? I mean, I've said for years, I think we could solve world peace if we just talked cars. I've had the
Yeah.
opportunity to travel across the world and be in all sorts of places where, I was in the Middle East one time, and I was at on a Friday night. There was a drift exhibition going on, and the everybody was in their white garb except me in my American clothes, and it was like, "Where's Waldo?" You could see me in the stands next to all these other people, and a few people said to me, "Were you not intimidated or scared?" And I was like, "We're talking cars, gang.
Yeah.
I mean, you find this area where." My wife laughs at me because we'll go to parties and places where I don't know anybody, and I always find the car people, and
Yep.
and she's like, "Oh yeah, I knew it wouldn't take long," or we're at a restaurant, or we're at the shopping mall, and somebody walks by with a with a King of the Hammers T-shirt, and you end up talking to them,
Yep.
and we find each other, and we share that love and that passion that it I don't know if I could put the right words together, but you start to smile and chuckle and find this common ground when people can be so polarized today. Yet you start talking cars and the culture and people and their favorites and what they drive and who they are. It's just fun. It's just cool.
100%. So, Mike, as we kind of wind this thing down a little bit, one of the things I did want to bring up is you have a fabulous family.
Thank
You
you.
know, your wife is amazing. You've got great kids, and you're lucky, I think, that you've got boys that are in the business. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Diana, we've been married 43 years, and she'll still admit
Congratulations.
today she's not a car person, but she goes along with, she understands my passion and my drive and my love. And, um, you know, people ask me sometimes what's the hardest thing in business. And I've always said the business side, it's got its challenges for sure. And, they say if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I don't know if I completely agree with that, but I do get up every morning still and try to be the first one in and one of the last ones to leave. And I enjoy it. And she's been alongside of me for that ride. So she understands my love and my passion. But the hardest thing is finding that balance between work and family. I think for me anyway, that's that balance, right? So I enjoy working. I enjoy the challenge. I want to provide for my family, so I can always put a lot of hours in at work. But I also need to have family time. And we're Italian, of course, so I think that's probably inbred with us in any case. But so we try to do things as a family, whether that's water skiing or boating in the summer or off-roading or those sorts of things. I've got three kids, two sons and a daughter, and both my boys are in the industry, so that's really fun and really enjoyable to see, and both successful. And my daughter has two boys and a girl who the boys are already into off-roading, into cars, into drag racing and monster trucks and those sorts of things. So 5 grandkids in total. And we enjoy off-roading. We enjoy car stuff all together as a family. And it's great to see their passion for it. I mean, it wouldn't matter what they want to do in life. I'll support them anyway, but it's a real blessing to have them in the industry and to have my grandkids now. I've got a 9-year-old Dominic who's off-road racing, who's doing really well for his first year. And then my two sons are off-roading as well and doing pretty well. We're doing the core series and some off-roading and different short course events. Although we just bought my son Mike just bought a car to maybe go run Baja. So we'll see. We're thinking about doing that.
That's big stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind going along. We'll see if my age will hold out, but I wouldn't mind navigating for some part of one of the races. And
you ran Legends cars with the boys at one point too.
We did. Yeah, we've run Legend cars. We've run go-karting. I had a background in racing. I kind of ran out of money and talent by the time I was 30, but I still enjoy it. And we still go do track days together. I still like to climb in a car once in a while. So
you know what they say, how to make a small fortune in racing. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've learned that.
A large one.
I've learned that. So we enjoy dirt biking and side by sides and all of that. So I'm really blessed to be part of that. And to have my family alongside of me and all that. And for me now to see the passion in not only my kids' eyes, but now my grandkids' eyes, is really fun. It really is. I'm very blessed in that area.
That's really cool. So, Mike, I guess my last question that I wanted to ask is you've got an interesting gig in that, I think most CEOs of most organizations have sort of a traditional P&L and, a pretty vertical org chart. And you've got this business that you're running that's pretty unusual in that it's a trade association. It's sort of a nonprofit, but there's for-profit
Right.
kind of arms. You've got this advocacy thing on the other side of the country. You've got a trade show. You've got a member organization. There's many tentacles. You've got a board
Yep.
that's advising you that has almost 100% turnover every 6-8 years. You've got a new chair every 2 years. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. As you think back on your time, certainly your time at SEMA, but even over your career, what's sort of the biggest mistakes you made, and what did you learn from them?
Well, let me first say, one of the things that I like to pitch is the fact that as SEMA and as PRI, different than other trade shows and different than other organizations, we take all the money we earn and put it back into the industry. So we're not a for-profit business like other trade shows can be and other businesses can be. We take all that money, anything we make off our shows or any other things, and put it back in the industry. It's the first business I've run where we're okay not making anything on the bottom line. So that's really new and different for me coming from a for-profit business. So that's number one. But there's been so many things you learn over time. And, I think so many of us learn from a school of hard knocks. But the one thing that kind of comes to mind on that question is learning to delegate. I think early on, I was really taught and I really thought that I wouldn't ask anybody to do what I wouldn't do. And so what that meant, early on was, whether we're taking inventory or whether I would help go pick parts if we were behind or, I wanted to lead by example, but I wanted to also let anybody know that I wouldn't ask them to do anything that I wouldn't do. And I had to learn to trust and to delegate. And, again, I'll give you an example. When I ran my businesses, if the orders got behind, I'd go out and pick parts with them and help ship parts. And what I learned was we really didn't get any more production. They just delegated up. And so I ended up having to.
I'm in that now.
We ended up. They ended up getting me to do the work, and so I really had to learn to delegate. I really had to learn to trust. I really had to learn to surround myself with the best people, and not have to say to them, "Hey, well, I think we can do this better," or "You don't know what you're talking about. Let me do it this way." To really trust them and to find the best people. That even involves an ego sometimes of me just saying, "Okay, I'm going to let them do it. I'm going to let them do it to the best of their ability," and trust them to do it, and continue to trust them to do it until there's a reason not to. But to learn to orchestrate and delegate and let these, surround yourself with the best people you can find, and to trust them and let them go run and do their job, and to make that all work, and to encourage them, to give them the support needed, to push them along the way, but to trust and to delegate, and not try to be the guy that's the best at everything, and to really let them go do their job.
Wow, that's great advice. And I think you've, from what I can tell and from what I hear, you've done a lot to sort of improve the culture at SEMA too.
Thank you. Yeah, we work on it every day. I've got a great HR person now that we're really working on those things. We just released our new value statements and working through that culture part because you need a good team. I mean, I learned that from Penske probably, that he really poured into his people and worked with his people. And it's really important to find the best you can and to take care of them, because when you have to replace them, it's painful.
Well, yeah, you're right, and that can be damaging to culture, right? So how do you?
Yeah.
So you've got a deadline coming, or an important date coming up, I think, right? We've got tell us about that for show registration.
Yeah, so show registration is opening up here in May, and that's for all the attendees to show up. We're right in the middle of getting all the booths set up now and getting the layout ready to go, and booth selection will start here pretty quick as well, for SEMA, and then followed by PRI. And so these, I don't know that people realize that we work on these shows 365 days a year. And in fact, sometimes people even know us for our SEMA show and for our PRI show. I get asked often what part of Las Vegas I live in. And of course, I live in Southern California, and SEMA's headquarters are here in Southern California. And we do things 365 days a year outside of the show, but we got a team dedicated to just these shows and to making them the best there are, and to continue to create and to innovate and to make them better. But it's really important that people get their hotels early, that they register early, that we know who's coming, and so that we can prepare for all of that. A lot of work goes into behind the scenes.
How do they do that?
Yeah.
Is that on SEMAshow.com or SEMA.org?
Yeah, SEMAshow.com is where you'll sign up for the show, and the PRI shows in the same manner. And lots of websites. We've got our off-road one, which is offroadbusiness.org. But all those, if you just go to SEMAshow.com or SEMA.org, you'll see those different links. And by the way, new websites are coming.
Nice. Well, good. That's been a long haul on that one.
It has been. You're aware of it. So we're
I will say probably the single best move I experienced when I was on the board in terms of sort of swaying opinion is when I got on the board, I was a vocal kind of an a-hole. I had a lot of opinions, and
you were a great board member.
Oh, thank you. I had a lot of preconceived notions early on in my board time, and I had to sort of learn that I didn't know what I didn't know. And by the end, I think I maybe was a little bit more informed than when I started. But part of that process was I went in thinking like, well, why is this booth over here? And why does this person get booth selection over there? And Tom Gattuso, who's a pretty quiet guy who runs the show, the VP of, what's his title? I guess he's VP of events, yeah. Right? And he's very soft-spoken, and he kind of quietly one day when we were having one of those conversations, he said, we're doing the booth selection. You should come watch. And I'm like, okay, I'll come. Sure. Okay. And I'm in like the war room upstairs in the garage watching them put that thing together, and because you don't know, right. You don't know when the rep calls the person from the company and says like, okay, what booth do you want? And here's the size you signed up for, and you don't know what they're going to pick. And so there's this like crazy Tetris jigsaw thing happening in real time. And I was completely floored by the logistics of it and how complicated it was and how kind of low key things were as they're doing this in real time, and no one's freaking out. And it's kind of like a boiler room. And I was just, after that, my tone changed completely, where I'm like, yeah. The amount of people and moving parts and like tribal knowledge that goes into putting that thing together is shocking. And after that, I just shut up because I'm like, okay, these guys are good. They know what they're doing. This is an insanely difficult thing that they're putting together. Because I think as an attendee, you show up and it's just like,
it's all there.
It's just there. And you're like, yeah, this is.
It's an amazing logistics. And we're doing a lot more now with, just our team in those areas and project management tools and software we've put in. But, I just about every day will get out of my office and we'll walk the halls and just talk to people and see what's going on. And I have now this new video series I do internally as a communication to the team called Mic Drop. But it's, cool. I go into different departments and talk to them. But I was over last summer just walking down and talking to a couple people, and I saw this one woman working on these spreadsheets, and I said, what's all that? And she said, well, this is all the signage that goes to the show. And just rows and rows of people and names and artwork and 1,500 different signs, different posters and signs that go up at the SEMA show. And they're up for 4 days and they get torn back down. And I didn't, I never had thought about that before because it just all happens. But there's just these specialty areas where people just pour in this time, and they come out 99% perfect. I mean, you'll get that one complaint once in a while where the sign was in the wrong spot, or they changed the artwork and we didn't know, or something. But the attention to detail and the things that go on in the logistics, the security that goes on. I mean, there's stuff that goes on in security that is impressive that we can't talk about, but things that go on to make sure that the show is safe, and things that go on to make sure that people get in okay, and that the buses are running, and the logistics you can imagine. I mean, and that's why we're voted one of the number one shows in America, and the number one show in Las Vegas. So,
you guys do a great job.
Yeah, and the same thing that goes on at PRI for Indianapolis. So we've just got an amazing logistics team and show team that live, breathe those areas, and like everything else in our business, whether it's RJ in marketing, whether it's our garage people or our SEMA data people, they are just passionate. They want to put out the best product there is. They want to do the best for the association and for the industry, along with our board. There's definitely a lot of passionate people that want us and push me to continue to do better.
Well, you got a great board.
We do.
And I think you've got some really good leadership right now on that side of things, and I'm excited to see what you guys keep doing.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Mike, thank you for taking all your time. I know you're super busy.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, I'm really grateful that you gave us this time. If people, so we talked about semashow.com, we talked about SEMA.org. If they want to, is that the best way for people to follow along what you're doing?
I think that's probably the best. And then it can drill you down to some of the other areas like GORBA and like our government affairs and our PAC and our super PAC,
PRI,
all those sorts of things.
Very good. Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you for your time today. For all of you listening at home, thank you for joining us on Only the Strong Survive, powered by Kahn Media. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you like this episode, you can catch us on YouTube and Spotify, as well as iTunes podcasts. Thanks for joining us, everybody. And thank you, Mike, from SEMA, for joining us today.
Thank you, Dan. Always great to be with you.
Likewise.